Your voice, sir. Sir, your voice is not clear. Please unmute. Switch on your microphone. Awesome, sir. Not clear, sir. Your voice. Unmute. Sir, please unmute your microphone. மியூட்ல தான் இருக்கு. ஆனா Vasudevan, sir. Your voice is not clear, sir. It's not recognized. Sir, you may log out and then you rejoin this meet. Yes. Now it is clear, sir. Vasudevan, sir. No, breaking your voice. Not audible. Sir, sir, please increase your volume in your system. Are you using a headset, sir? Microphone. Some connection disturbance. Yeah. Sir, your voice is not audible. Some problem is there. Please rectify. Sorry, your headphone is not connected. Please make a synchronize this your voice and system.
phone number
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. என்ன சொல்றது கேக்குதா சார்?
சார் சார் இந்த அவர்கிட்ட தான் பேசிட்டு இருக்கேன். அவர் திரும்ப ரீஜாயின் பண்றாராம். அந்த கூப்பிடுவோம் சார். நான் உங்களை இன்வைட் பண்ணிடுறேன் சார். அப்புறமா நீங்க பேசுறீங்களா சார், இல்லை நீங்களே ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடுறீங்க சார்? ம்.
வாசுதேவன் சார் இருக்காரா? Sir, good afternoon. Sir, good afternoon. Vasudevan sir, good afternoon.
Sir, sir, not audible your voices. Also, sir, please unmute your system.
Vasudevan sir, good afternoon. Namaste, sir. Question over, sir. Question. Good afternoon, sir.
Sir, இப்போ வந்து
So good afternoon, sir.
Sir,
What's
good
the one,
afternoon.
sir?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon to all dear participants. I am very sorry to say that this is an internet problem. Due to this, we are delayed in 15 minutes. So this is today's speaker. This session speaker is Company Secretary G. Vasudevan, sir. Insolvency professional and approved valuer. GV and Associates, Company Secretaries, Director, GVA Corp Advisory Solutions Private Limited, Coimbatore. He is a fellow member of ICSI with post-qualification experience of 18 years and overall industry experience of more than 24 years. Practicing a company secretary for past 18 years and presently partner of GV and Associates, company secretaries of company secretary firm having offices at Coimbatore and Chennai. A registered member with IBBI as qualified insolvency professionals and presently handling voluntary liquidation cases. He has qualified registered valuer examination as first person in the Coimbatore region and presently a qualified registered valuer in securities and financial assets. He is carrying out valuation exercises for merger, corporate restructuring, insolvency cases, and other company law matters. Qualified to act as independent director. He is certified CSR professional to advise the corporate social responsibility matters and it is currently advising many companies on CSR activities. He is specialized in company law, FEMA, and drafting of corporate legal documents and business contracts. He has specialized in corporate legal matters regularly, appears before Company Law Board, now National Company Law Tribunal. He also specialized in compliances with the Reserve Bank regulations, registrations with the SEZs, STPs, and other special industry incentive schemes in India. Director of GVA Group Advisory Solutions Private Limited, a company providing high and corporate services, including corporate structuring, corporate restructuring, takeover, merger and demergers, group structuring, succession planning, structural comparison planning for top and middle management, trademark registrations, oppositions for trademark registration, etc., and also have offices at Chennai. And with this brief introduction, I request Company Secretary Vasudevan sir to speak on his topic, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 and its impact on banking sector. Thank you very much. Welcome you, sir.
Sir, good afternoon. Good afternoon for the nice introduction. So I thank the organizers for inviting me for this lecture and workshop program. So I thank all the faculty members who has joined this program. So I think it will be a good session for 5 days for all of you, a good learning curve for all of you, the practical experience of all the, I've seen all the faculty members who have rich experience in the industry as well as in the academic arena. So today my topic is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 and its impact on banking sector. So this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code being now just crossed the 5 years mark in July 2021 this year. So this is a good time to discuss this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, mainly its impact on banking sector. Today we'll discuss, I'll just guide you through the this session will be like this it will be divided into 4 parts. anytime you can just interrupt me. Just I want to make this session as a very interactive one. So first area will be like insolvency and ease of doing business. Then the insolvency and bankruptcy code and its important areas. Some judicial pronouncement under IBC. Then in the final part, we'll be discussing on the impact of IBC on banking sector. So first I'll be taking through the insolvency and ease of doing business. So why the insolvency and why we have to link the insolvency with ease of doing business. So once this present government taken over during 2014, they thought that the reforms for what are all the areas the reforms has to be done. Then the business, when we facilitate the MSMEs or the startups for doing the business, the World Bank has given certain parameters for doing business in a country, in an economy. They have codified certain parameters for ease of doing business ranking. So accordingly, these are all the ranks they give it for. These are all the parameters they will consider for ranking ease of doing business. Out of these, all these things, if you look at starting from my left to right, it will be like starting a business or employing workers, dealing with construction permits, getting electricity, registering property, getting whatever the areas which are important for business they have given, getting credit, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, contracting with government, enforcing contracts, and finally resolving insolvency. When you think of a business, it's not only a business and all this doing business. It's an exit also. It's very, very important. If I don't want to business, if any investor who is investing from outside India, they'll look for that, whether I can return, whether whatever the money is available left over or it's available, whether I can safely exit from the business if the business is not successful. So the resolving insolvency is also a very, very the important thing. Hitherto in India, we don't have a structured or codified law for a proper insolvency or a resolving insolvency or a proper exit route for any either a corporate structure company or a partnership firm or whatever the case may be. We don't have a proper exit route. So that's why we lagged behind, our country lagged behind this ranking in ease of doing business. So that's one of the primary reason for introduction of these insolvency and bankruptcy code. So when we think of why we have to resolve the insolvencies, that proper structure for resolving the insolvency, when we think of an act, there should be a proper structure for resolving the insolvency. Then whenever doing a business, whenever an entity who want to come out of that, or whether they are having a stress, there should be some kind of solution available to them. Then the important thing is recovery of credits. If there is a credit, or in case of the company is facing some kind of a stress or default, there should be a proper structure or proper mechanism to recover the credits in a timely manner, as well as without a much of a legal hurdle. Then methodical way of exiting. Then quicker liquidation. If the company, if the resolution is not possible, then the final thing will be a liquidation. This should also be a quicker one. So these are all the things act or a code, if it comes, it should provide. So these are all the primary motive for introduction of this IBC code. So now I'll glance you through some of the history. So in 2016, India's rank in this doing business, ease of doing business, is a total ranking given by the World Bank. So in that, the earlier we have discussed, all the parameters are considered. Each and every item is given a rank, and the overall rank is given. And accordingly, the overall rank for India was 130 during 2016, and we have improved. During 2019, we were able to achieve the position of 63, only because of lot of reforms taken place in each and every areas. So one of the important thing is this insolvency code, the IBC code. So in resolving insolvency, as I said earlier, each and every area has been given a rank. Earlier from 2016, if you look at the rank for insolvency, resolving insolvency, it was 136. Our ranking, overall ranking was 130. Then you can see how up to 2020 our rank has been improved from almost we have doubled or tripled our ranking. It's we have in insolvency arena we have improved so much that we have touched 52 in the world.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Slides are not moving, sir.
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Now you can see this India's ranking.
No, sir. No, sir.
No,
No, sir. Only first slide
slide.
only we can see.
Okay.
Title slide only we are seeing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next slide is more. Importance of revising. Now, India position in
Yeah.
India
Yeah, this
ranking in say results.
Yes, sir. Now it is synchronizing, sir. Thank you, sir.
Is it okay, sir?
It's okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So sorry for that.
No.
So now I think it's visible India's ranking in resolving insolvency.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah, yes. Now if you glance through, just I'll go back. These are all the parameters we touched. Just you can see it visually also. Just I thought you can see this. So these are were the parameters. Anyway, the presentation is available. The organizers can share it to you also.
Sure, sir. Sure.
So the India's ranking in resolving insolvency, mainly it's from 136 to 52 in 2020. In 5 years, we have improved mainly because of this IBC code. And if you see in the second row, the timeliness of this resolving insolvency, we have able to increase this to 4.3 years to 1.6 years. It's been a great improvement. Almost we were able to cut down 1/3. Then if you see the recovery rates, earlier it was only 25%, close to 25%. If a person is say, if you are indebted to a person for a company, corporate person or anybody for 100 rupees, you, after 4 years you will be getting only 25 rupees. So that was the scenario 5 years ago. Now in 2020, we can in 1.5 years we can able to recover around 70 rupees, 71 rupees. It's a very much bigger improvement. So this is one of the important criteria for introduction of IBC code. So per se, this is one of the important reforms in the recent years India has seen. So with this brief background, why the resolution of insolvency and liquidation process and a codified structure of act is very important for any country. So with this brief background, I'll just glance through some of the important provisions of IBC code. If you have any doubt or if you have any clarification, you can stop me and you can ask any queries. So IBC code was placed before the parliament and in 2016. It got the approval of the parliament in 2016. Actually, it got the assent and it came from 1st July 2017. 1st July effective from July 2017. So the primary objectives of this IBC code, these are all the primary objectives you can say to promote the entrepreneurship. Why in insolvency law they say promote entrepreneurship? Because if you feel if you are doing one business, you are not able to succeed in that business, you must be coming out of the business at the earliest. Then only the other business or other person willing to do a business will be happy to do the business or a particular they'll select the business. So the promotion of entrepreneurship will happen only if they can feel that doing business, taking risk, as well as if it is not succeeding, I can come out easily. That feel factor should be there. Otherwise, no person will enter into entrepreneurship. Then a codified law will provide for a availability of credit to the majority of businesses. So if they have a good structure of recovery mechanism, all the creditors will be ready to lend.
Sir, sorry for interruption. Next slide, sir.
Yeah, just a minute. You can see this one, sir. Primary objective.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
No, sir, not moving. Yeah. Okay, sir.
Now we can see.
Now it's okay.
Yeah, yes. So these primary objectives, just I glance through this, why these things has to be there to promote entrepreneurship, to make credit available. Then the identification of stress at the early stage and providing proper resolution. This is one of the important thing for IBC. Just in a short while, I'll explain. I'll glance you through some of the provisions which codifies the early detection of stress as well as the resolution. Then to balance the interest of all stakeholders by consolidating, amending the existing law. Because in India, we have a lot of laws. Almost if you think of a business, there is a saying that India is a country which has a more number of regulations than if you think of a company, public or a private limited company. Almost 300 statutes are there, 300 laws are there, the company has to follow. So each and every law in India will have their own codifications, and we have to almost 30-40 departments of central government as well as the state government we have to meet apart from local body authorities. So all these things are there. This IBC code, what they have done is whatever the important corporate laws, especially with respect to company law, then taxation laws, whichever discussed with anything with the finance or credit areas, or mainly with respect to running a business, they have combined or consolidated all these laws. Whatever the, say for example in Companies Act, earlier they were having a provisions for winding up for a company. Now what they have done is the winding up, everything they have consolidated into IBC. Then there is no provision for winding up in company law because the IBC is taking over the entire provisions of Companies Act. So then one of the main reason again is to reduce the time of resolution that earlier we have seen. Now the resolution or a recovery, it's been come down from 4 years to close to 4 years to almost 1.5 years. Then whenever a number of years comes down, certainly there will be a value maximization. We can maximize the value of realization of assets. If the more number of years it takes for a liquidation, earlier the people were used to tell that almost it will take 20 years, 30 years to liquidate a company. So if you think of a company when they might have put into the 90s, they were not able to recover, now means almost the entire plant and machinery or everything, the value will be almost zero. So these are all the mainly things which are considered as the primary objectives of IBC. Now we'll move on to the impact. Why again the IBC? Because of the IBC, earlier I think all the participants must aware that the BAFR and Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction and SIC Industrial Construction Act, and this was I think entirely replaced by this IBC code. Earlier BAFR was the only authority. Now the National Company Law Tribunal is the authority for, it's adjudicating authority for administering the adjudicating the entire legal mechanism is taken care by the NCLT. And the important thing is earlier there was no timelines for any kind of either resolving insolvency or liquidation. The main thing was the IBC is very tight timelines. They have mentioned earlier it was 180 to 270 days. Now at the maximum they have given is a recent amendment. They have given maximum 330 days. That is 11 months. Any case should not go beyond that 330 days. That means if you are not able to resolve a case within 330 days, then it has to go to the next stage of liquidation. So this is the present timeline. So it says because of this, either the company can be revived. If it is not able to revive within that 11 months period, then automatically the company goes for a liquidation. So this is one of the main important key point for that IBC. Because of that, most recovery will take place in a faster manner, or revival will happen in a faster manner. And because of that, mainly the financial discipline will come for a corporate, either if you are small, medium or micro enterprises, or a medium-sized enterprises, or a large corporate, they'll bring in some kind of a financial discipline because of IBC. And one more thing, earlier the promoters or the owners will have an upper hand in a business. Once the company goes into the IBC regime, automatically the creditors will have an upper hand. This is one of the new thought process in India for a recovery mechanism. Then moratorium. The moratorium effect is that I will also look into that what is moratorium and what will be impact in detail. So this moratorium means during that resolution period or liquidation, the resolution period, no other can initiate case against the company. So this is very important for resolving any kind of business restructuring, resolving insolvency. Then as I discussed earlier, if the desired revival is not possible, automatically the company goes into liquidation within that time period. And all the corporate resolutions comes under NCLT. As we discussed, its timelines are very, very strict. And one more very, very important thing is guarantors, not only the corporates, the guarantors of the corporates also can bring under the common forum of NCLT and DRT. Presently for corporates, NCLT is the forum. DRT is supposed to handle the cases for partnership concerns and individuals. It is yet to come in India. While borrowers may file resolution application seeking moratorium, but the borrowers will have to face the threat of liquidation. And one more thing is that borrowers also can file resolution if they feel that they have a financial stress, they were not able to tackle, or they were not able to face the financial stress. They can also make an application to NCLT for the revival of the company. So these are all the main things or main impacts of IBC. We'll look into the next areas. And IBC, when we think of IBC, just there are a lot of definitions are there. I'll glance you through very, very few definitions which are very, very important from banking sector point of view also. Hitherto all the regulations, whatever regulations we were having in India with respect to banking or anything, the stress means identification of stress happens. Say if you are the NPA, deciding NPA, all these things, it takes a longer time, longer period. But when it comes to IBC, they say it's a default. If there is a one default, if they were not able to pay a banker or even a 1 month due, then it's a default. If they were not able to make a payment to a operational creditor, then it's a default. So if there is a default, then automatically there is a thing that there is a conception that the company is having some kind of a stress. So that's why the definition of default is very, very important. Default means it's been defined as a non-payment of a debt when whole or any part or installment. That's why I said even a 1 month delay for banking payment is a default. Any due, if there is payable or it's not paid by the debtor or a corporate debtor, then it becomes a default. So even a 1 month delay of your term loan due is a default. So with this, the banker can initiate. Then likewise, default, one of the important thing whenever it comes to operational debt, normally financial creditors like bankers are the financial creditors, mainly those who lend. I think the participants will know the difference between the operational debts and the financial debt. Financial debt means it's only debt for amount lent for a financial purpose to earn the interest, whereas in operational debt, it's a given supply of goods or services. Wherein whenever there is in case of operational debt, there will be in case of a debt, normally this kind of in case of a corporate scenario, there will be a give and take. Normally it will be a regular supply of goods or services. The bills will be raised on a regular basis and the payment will be made either part or full, or continuously throughout the year the payment will be made. So in that case, normally, if there is any dispute with respect to quality or quantity of goods, or in case of a services, it's kind of a deficiency in service, whatever is there. In case of any dispute, then they cannot take this case into this IBC arena. That should be whatever the due amount due is there. It should be without any dispute. If there is any dispute, then they cannot bring that dispute into IBC, because the purpose of IBC is to resolve the company and revive the company from insolvency, not to settle the dispute from the parties. So that's why this definition is very, very important. The dispute also actually include even if there is any arbitration proceedings between the parties, it's also included. But again, one more very, very important is operational debt. That's what I am talking. I have explained about operational. Who is the operational creditor? So that's why operational debt means a claim in respect of provisions of goods or services, including employment. Here it is very, very important. Even employees are treated as operational debtors. So they can also, if the salary is due for say 1 month or 2 months, and they can move to NCLT. This is one of the important provisions of IBC. And a new regime of administrators called insolvency professionals have been introduced. Earlier, the court will appoint administrators and even liquidators. It's almost a government officers. They will come and do all the processes. Because of that, earlier a lot of time has been taken. Now it's been handed over to a specific professional called insolvency professionals. They will handle the entire cases of resolution of insolvency or liquidation. So mainly to speed up the process, because they are the executives or administrators who will purely handle the case, only the specific cases. So there will not be any employees of the court or any parties. So earlier I have discussed about the guarantors. Here the definition here the personal guarantor means an individual who is a surety in a contract or guarantee of a corporate debtor. Those who have any guarantors who are given a guarantee to a company or a corporate debtor. Here few terms are very, very important. Corporate debtor means that particular company, Then the financial creditor means who has given a credit to that particular company who is suffering. Operational creditor also who has supplied goods or given services to that particular corporate debtor. So these are all because IBC code has a lot of definitions, almost 40-45 definitions. I have given you some of the very important definitions. Now we'll move on to the important area called who can invoke this IBC. 3 persons can invoke IBC, section 7, 9 and 10. A financial creditor or a banker, any person who has lent a financial debt can file an application. Whenever a default happens in a financial debt, they can move to the NCLT. Then operational creditor, as I said earlier, a supplier of goods or services. Then the company themselves, they feel that they are stressed or they were not able to settle their debts due in time. They themselves can make an application to NCLT for resolution or restructuring. So this is the structure. Whenever a default happens in a company, now actually partnership and individual it has not yet, though it is been in the IBC code, it's not yet been notified. So presently it's applicable only to the companies incorporated in India and the LLPs, limited liability partnerships registered in India. So the minimum amount earlier till March 2020 it was 1 lakh. Now it's been increased to 1 crore from 24th March 2020. Whenever a default happens in financial debt or operational debt, the financial creditor or operational creditor of that particular company can make an application to NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, for initiating a corporate insolvency resolution process. The first stage will be a resolution process. The law gives time, they will check whether the company, the business can be revived within a timely manner. If they were not able to revive, then it will go for a liquidation. So this is the scheme of the code. As we discussed about the timelines are very important under this code. These are all the timelines. Just I'll glance you through the timeline from filing of application to NCLT. This is the starting point. Within 14 days, the court has to decide whether the case can be admitted or not. So roughly actually it's given in the code, but practically because of the number of cases filed in every court, the time it takes, it's a little longer time it takes, but it's not a inordinate delay. It may take 2 or 3 months. But once the admission happens, everything happens in a timely manner. That's the 0. Then the public announcement within the date of once the admission is happens, the interim resolution professional is appointed. He has to take care of the public announcement within first week. Then within 14 days, he has to call for a claims, whoever the financial creditor or operational debtor, they have to submit their claims, and he has to go for appointing the valuers for valuing the entire assets of the company. Then he has to constitute the committee of creditors with the financial creditors. If there is no financial creditors, then with the 18 major operational creditors. Then the first COC meeting, everything, if you see, means everything is all the numbers in the middle line or the number of days. So the first meeting has to happen within the COC meeting has to happen within 51 days. Then the preparation of information memorandum, IM is an information memorandum, and the plan has to be submitted within 150 days. then the COC has to approve, and if it is not possible in 180 days, another timeline is given. It's a 90 days extension. Is one time extension is possible. It can be obtained by making an application to NCLT. Now the maximum timelines as per the IBC is 330 days. Beyond that, automatically no case, whether whatever the stage it is, whether the resolution plan is received or resolution plan is passed or not, if the 330 days are passed, automatically the case has to go to, hello? Automatically the case has to go for liquidation. So these are all the very, very strict timelines. This provides very, very important thing called the resolution. If there is no resolution, then automatically the company goes for liquidation. So in the adjudicatory system, we have a national company law tribunal. In case if anybody agreed with the decisions of National Company Law Tribunal, certainly they can make an appeal to National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, NCLAT. Then in case of a partnership, it's yet to come, partnership and individual, the DRT is given, the Debt Recovery Tribunal is given a power of adjudicating authority. Therein the DRAT, that appellate tribunal, Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal will be the appellate body. So all this process has to be happen in a timely manner. They can either accept the application. If they accept the application, it will go in the timelines what we have mentioned. It can be rejected by the court. It's rejected means that's all, there ends the case. As I said earlier, 180 days plus 90 days. Then in case if it is not, means maximum 330 days. One more thing is there, in case the size of asset is very, very small, then it's called a fast track insolvency. We call it, it can be done in 90 days and 45 days extension can be given. It has to be resolved in 135 days. Some reason or the other, this fast track insolvency is not favored by most of the applicants. So these are all the just bird's eye view of timelines. We discussed about the moratorium. So the moratorium here is the, what is the moratorium effect means? All the, whatever the court cases or proceedings against the company, either by the government or anybody, any parties, outside parties, it comes to a halt, stay. That's a moratorium effect. So this is applicable for the entire that CARP period. We call it as corporate insolvency resolution period. That 190 days or that particular period, this moratorium is applicable. So during this period, nobody can institute, or even a continuation is stopped, halted. Nobody can institute a case against the particular company for transferring or encumbering, alienating or disposing of any assets of the particular corporate debtor. Even a banker cannot initiate a foreclosure or recovery or enforce a security interest under the SARFAESI Act. It cannot be done during this period. And recovery of any property by a owner or any outsider cannot also do any kind of a legal activity with respect to any recovery. So this is a protection given so as to speed up the resolution process. Because all the parties who are connected with the cases, they have to come through the IBC mechanism. Either they have to come as a claimants, they have to come as a parties for this, they have to come as a COC member. So they have to join IBC process either to resolve or to move forward. So that's why I explained this, the continuation of operation for the business. So the moratorium is very, very important. So one of the very, some of the very exemptions are, supply of essential goods can be given to the corporate debtor during the, because it's a going concern, the business, if the company is doing a business, then it should not be stopped. Actually, the company will be running automatically. The professional interim resolution professional will be taking care of the business. He has to take care of the business also. So our normal business of the company should not be stopped. It's not come within the purview of a moratorium. Then apart from that, the government can prescribe any other transactions, which will also be allowed during the moratorium period. Then in the timelines, we saw some public announcement to be made. So these are all the requirements or content of the public announcement. Normally the name and address of the corporate debtor, their registration number, and details of the resolution professional, interim resolution professional, dates on which the submission of claims to be made, and responsible for, then the penalties for misclaims, everything should be given in a public announcement. There is a format structured by the IBC. It's been structured in the IBC regulation. So everything is formatted now. All the things are formatted, and nothing. Resolution professional, he has to go by law and procedure because he is officer appointed by law. So as I said, interim resolution professionals are appointed by the adjudicating authority. So he has to work for a period of 30 days. Normally in that period, he has to complete the job of public announcement, constitution of the COC, that is Committee of Creditors. So actually he replaces, IRP replaces the entire board of directors of the company. The board of directors are suspended during the CERP period. So the interim resolution professional literally is that is CEO of the company. So once the resolution professional, normally resolution professional will we call it as two stages. One is interim resolution professional. He will make an announcement. He will collect the claims and he'll submit to the NCLT, and he'll constitute the Committee of Creditors. In the first meeting of the Committee of Creditors, the resolution professional will be appointed. Normally, the interim resolution professional will be continued as a resolution professional to complete the remaining process, or a new person will be appointed. It's a decision of the Committee of Creditors. So it's a responsibility of the Committee of the Creditors to appoint a resolution professional in that particular first meeting. Then the entire powers, normally the terms of reference is defined by the Committee of Creditors, but the Act itself, IBC code itself, and the regulations made thereunder gives all the structure, what is the duties, what's the role, everything is given under the IBC code and the regulations. So these are all the main prime duties of the resolution professional. Conducting the meeting of Committee of Creditors, then presenting all the resolution plans at the meeting, then documentation part, maintain and update the list of claims, then prepare the information memorandum. And then when we come to rights, it's to take the immediate custody of and control all the assets of the company. It's one of the primary responsibility of the resolution professionals. Therein here we are, as a resolution professional, I can say we have faced a lot of difficulties in taking possession of the assets of corporate debtor companies, because we have to handle cases of multi-million rupees or multi-crore projects or multi-location projects we have to take care of. It's very difficult task because sorry, one person has to handle almost an entire corporate sector of a 10,000 crores or 20,000 crore company. It's a very, very Herculean task. So this, anyway, they have to take care of. Of course, they can appoint the various representatives, various consultants, or various guiding persons for them to. They can appoint the advocates, they can appoint various consultants, appoint their auditors and security personnel to protect all the assets. But during the meantime of a CRP period, a resolution professional can be replaced by the committee of creditors. The committee of creditors, with the approval of the NCLT, that is adjudicating authority, they can change the resolution professional. So it's a power given to COC. Then we'll come to committee of creditors. So the resolution professionals will collate the claims, determine the financial position of the company, a particular corporate debtor, and they'll give the entire, whatever the information available to the committee of the creditors to make decision. Because here the resolution professional or the RP cannot make any decision. He's only administrator and he's not a decision maker. So the decision will be made only by the creditors. That's why we have seen the objectives. It's the creditors will have a say, upper hand on this, because the owner from the promoters, the power and control shifts to the creditors. The creditors will have upper hand. Normally, the financial creditors will have an upper hand, the secured financial creditors. If the company, the corporate debtor don't have any financial creditor, then the operational creditor will form a COC and they'll have a right over the assets of the company. So as I said earlier, the financial creditor, normally their voting pattern considers based on the number of amount lent, based on the amount lent, their shareholding is not shareholding, their voting pattern is, because if the company has more than one financial creditor, say 4 creditors or 5 financial creditors, 4 or 5 financial creditors or banks might have lent to the company. So all of them, based on the amount lent by them, they will have a voting power in the COC. Likewise, the operational creditor, if the operational creditor is formed in the COC, if there is no financial creditor, based on the amount supplied or goods supplied by them, the value of the amount, they will have a voting in the committee of creditors. The assignment of operational debt means operational creditor can assign the debt to some other person. They can get a money. Say, for example, normally we will have a factoring facility. If a company has availed, any of a person, creditor has availed a factoring facility, normally the company would have collected the money, then the factor, who might be a banker, they will be in a position of the operation creditor. So in the corporate insolvency resolution clauses, the resolution plan is very, very important. Resolution plan is nothing but a revival plan for the company. How to revive the company? Any person who is having a financial standing and who is not connected to the present promoters, actually the existing promoters, normally the existing promoters should not present a resolution plan. There are some exemptions to that in case of a smaller MSME companies. So resolution plan is nothing but a revival plan for the company, how they can give a finances and how the present clients of the financial creditors or operational creditors can be settled and how the company can be revived, what will be the working capital requirement, what is the plan for bringing in the money. So this forms the resolution plan. Once a resolution plan, if a committee of creditors feels the resolution plans is viable, then they will give a, based on the voting pattern, the 66% is considered as a winning voting share, and if the resolution plan is approved by a financial creditor or a operational debtor who is forming part of a COC approves, then it's considered the resolution plan is approved. The entire process has to happen within a period of 180 days or 270 days, at the max 330 days. So one more area, we'll call it as a waterfall mechanism in IBC. Normally, if a resolution is not successful, the company will move on to the next stage. Say, if the resolution, if it is not successful, the revival is not possible for a particular corporate debtor, then certainly the company will move on to the next step for liquidation of the company. That liquidation, and that is sale, realization of whatever the assets left over, and the distribution of the assets. Herein, who are all the persons having priority for receiving the assets left over? This is called a waterfall mechanism. So first thing is the resolution cost. The cost, the fee for insolvency professional or whatever the cost for resolving the insolvency will be the first step, because they should not be, because the people, resolution professionals, they are professionals who are coming service for the purpose. They can't do as a honorary purpose. So for that purpose, at least their duty or their payment should be settled first. That's why they have given a, otherwise nobody will come for this work. So for that, the law ranks it as a first priority. Then second one is the debts to secured creditors. Second, wages and unpaid dues to the employers, then financial debts, then workman dues, then the other debts, remaining debts, and the preference shareholders. Finally, it comes to preference shareholders and equity shareholders. So now these are all the institutions involved in this process. The IBBI is the primary authority, which is the administrative authority for the act. Then the Insolvency Professional Agency, which is the administrating agency for the insolvency professionals. Then the Information Utility is a structure created for storing the data, corporate information data in future. I think it's just now newly started. This Information Utility is a very nascent stage, and it's only a 1 year old. And I think the benefits of Information Authority will be getting in a future period, because all the information about the credit now, I think you might be aware of the participants might aware about the CIBIL. Even the individuals, all the credit portions are recorded in the CIBIL. Likewise, the information of the company, even operational debt, a single paise is now in future is going to be recorded in this Information Utility, and there will not be any problem for any future case. This was the visualization of the act, that whatever the information record, the Information Utility will give to the court, so that the court can take a timely decision on the resolution of insolvency or a liquidation. So this is the purpose of Information Utility. And key benefits of this IBC code, I think we have seen this already, to protect, mainly to protect the, starting from protect the secured creditors, resolving the company from the stressed state, then to protect the workers as well as to protect the entire business community. though we can say the IBC is like a blue moon, it's very, very difficult to see a change because we are a country, we have more than, after independence, we crossed 70 years. Then after that, this act, earlier regime is, everything takes time here. And when we say everything should be completed within a timeline of 1 year, means 20 years to 1 year, means it's very, very a difficult thing. But it has to be done. That I think till in last 5 years, most of the cases it has been followed the timelines, except this, because of last 2 years, because of COVID, lot of cases are getting extension. Apart from that, previous from 2017 to 2019, most of the cases were happening in mostly in timelines. I think it's a little small to see it. So these are all the cases. It's been filed and a recovery thing. Anyway, you can see the presentation when it's shared to you. So these are all the major industry-wise classification of IBC. Whatever the cases come, it's been whatever the resolution achieved. Out of 30 cases in a steel industry, 2 has been approved and still balances are pending. This is a very, very early stage for any act. So now we'll move on to a next stage. I'll just, because I think time is 3:45. Another 15 minutes available, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll just go fast and complete in another 15 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
So important judicial pronouncement under the IBC, because I think most of the participants, aware that being in a corporate faculties or lecturers, they know that all the business practices are based on customs and practices, judicial. So whenever we think of a customs and practices, the judicial pronouncements are very, very important, because the law and regulation themselves, they cannot do everything, because a lot of things has come to know only the practical aspect of it. Practical problems is given placed before the court, and a solution is given by the particular court. So based on that, lot of judicial things has come, and because of that, lot of changes has come in IBC. Now the IBC, it was in 2016, is entirely different from what is now. So I'll just glance you through very, very few landmark decisions, because a lot of decisions in last 5 years has happened. So inherent power, actually the important judgment it has happened in 2017 was that the settlement is possible. During the course of CRP period, the settlement is, the parties can settle. Earlier it was not allowed. Now it's been, because of this judicial pronouncement, the act is allowing. They have inserted a separate section. Within a particular period, the settlement is possible. Even then, if it is in a CRP period, the either a financial creditor who has initiated the case can be settled, and the CRP can be withdrawn. So the law has changed because of this judicial decision. And one more important case is that Innovative Industries case, in that the supremacy over the other laws, they have said the other, because once the IBC code comes, we said the moratorium effect this, as well as the IBC code itself overpowers the other acts, say Companies Act or the SEBI Act. It overpowers the other act. So during that particular period, the other acts cannot be enforced. And Mobilex, it's a very, very important case wherein it's discussed about the dispute. What is the dispute? Is whenever there is a dispute when it comes to arbitration, if the arbitration award is given and therein they find anything is a dispute. Arbitration, if it is gone for arbitration, that means it's a dispute. It was decided and now it's become act also. On demand notice, actually, whenever an operation creditor wants to initiate a case, he has to give a demand notice. This is a legal mandatory requirement. The requirement is very important for initiating a case by the operation creditor, not for the financial creditor. So therein, in this case, what they have done is, even a company is outside the India who is a financial creditor, they can also send a notice and the legal hurdles should not be imposed for them. And one is very important thing, the applicability of limitation. Whether the limitation is applicable when a company goes into this IBC regime. This case was decided, and therein it was decided that yes, the limitation is applicable for IBC also. The 3 years limitation period normally for any debt is applicable. It's been amended. The amendment has been come in the IBC also. So that outcome is the case to be initiated within the 3 years limitation period. Beyond that, nobody can initiate even an IBC proceedings. Very important decision it came, and I think a lot of most of the participants will aware that the home buyers they were included as the financial creditors in this, because earlier the home buyers were the sufferers mainly because of failure of a particular construction company. If a particular construction company fails, then the ultimate sufferers are the home buyers who has given their money or advances for booking the flats. So they were considered as a financial creditors in the IBC. This is one of the landmark judgment. So I'll just rush through some of the other key judgments also. So if the periods are 270 or now the 330 days are crossed, it's liable to be liquidated. It's been given by the Supreme Court. Only exceptional cases can be extended beyond 330 days. So it has to be decided by NCLT. And one more thing is very important decision is the approval of the resolution plan is about it's a power of the COC, and the court cannot, NCLT or NCLT have no jurisdiction with respect to approval of resolution plan, with respect to analyzing or evaluating the commercial decisions or commercial wisdom of the COC. They can only involve in the legality or procedural matters, and they cannot involve in the commercial decision of the COC. And the role of the RP under the IBC is administrative and not adjudicatory. They cannot do the adjudication work. They are only the administrators. So the fair and equitable treatment should be given to all the types of creditors, financial as well as operational creditors. So even the RBI also given a circular. Earlier, in a later part, we'll see it. We'll look into this in detail. And some more key judgments are: the corporate debtors cannot be prosecuted for any offences committed prior to commencement of a CRP. And as I said earlier, the exit route under 12A, that is settlement. If settlement is possible, then the resolution applicant can withdraw the case can be withdrawn. This was one of the first case in which the resolution was achieved, that Synergies Zorais financial creditors. because of the scarcity of time, just I'm rushing through. And we'll move on to our final area of impact of IBC on banking sector. So banker's choice here, the importance is if a corporate debtor is not making any payment or a recovery is difficult, which mode to choose, which mode of recovery to choose. This is a decision to be made by the banker. So whether the IBC is a primary choice of banker is a very big question. So the RBI has given as per RBI, it is one of the deciding criteria here. Please look into it. In case if a company goes into CARP, if it is referred, then automatically 50% provision has to be made. Herein the banker will lose the point, because if provisions are made, then automatically they will lose, because if a 50% provision is made, if I say they have lent a 10 crore and 50% is 5 crore, provision has to be made, automatically 5 crore is the loss for them, for the bankers. So normally the banker will hesitate to do this. So normally the existing, you can see that existing is provisioning. See, in 1 year, substandard, if it is substandard means 15% or 10%. So it's almost, the provisioning is very less. The bankers will be comfortable in an earlier thing. That's why the losses for the banker is once the party comes to a particular corporate debtor, comes to a NPA stage, almost the entire assets is gone, the recovery is less. So because of the regulatory aspects and all these things, now the RBI has recently insisted that whatever the cases which is having a more than 5 crore value, it has to be recovered through IBC mechanism. So because bank has a lot of other structuring provisions in on the recovery mechanisms, like putting NPA, then moving through NPA cases under DRT and SARFAESI Act recovery. So all these things are there. And what types of cases banks can identify for referring to NCLT? There are some kind of a guidelines given to the bankers for seeing what kind of cases that can be given. The secured or partly secured NPA cases which have crossed 2 years. That's why most of the things, I think you might have also noticed, why the resolution is not coming, why the resolution is very, very slow. The IBC, one side people are saying that IBC is not successful because the resolution is not happening. Only most of the cases is going for liquidation. Only because of this. See, after 2 years of NPA, the person has defaulted, and after 2 years, if it is going to IBC means almost, I've seen a lot of cases, if it is after 2 years means nothing is left in the company. Automatically it will go for liquidation and the bankers will realize only peanut of the amounts. Then unsecured NPA cases. So these are all the reasons for now in the early stages of IBC, the resolution is not happening only because most of the very, very long pending cases, NPA cases, are referred by the financial creditors, bigger bankers. That's why the resolution process is a little bit slow. We are talking about the haircuts, bigger haircuts is given only because of the delay in bigger, say the time due. Once it comes to IBC after 2 years or 3 years, I think almost the entire assets are wiped out and a very, very meager amount is left in the corporate debtor. Say 5% or 10% of their original valuation is left out. So whether the banks can avoid IBC and refer the cases to NCLT. So these are the other ways. In case means without going to the IBC road, they can straight away go to NCLT under the Companies Act as in case it's been defrauding cases. If the corporate debtor has defrauding the creditors, that case they can go to NCLT straight away by avoiding IBC. See, I think all of during the structure, I think mainly all these this 5-day session is consists of mainly the concentration is on banking sector. I think most of you are aware of the processes and procedures in the banks and structure of banks. So if you, whatever the banks we consider, we have a rural banks, urban banks, and they have a definite structures in their banks. It is very, very difficult for them to get an approval from one stage to another. There also delays are happening in that stages also. So these are all some of the thing, because a branch manager has to identify a branch who has lent. He has to identify that the particular corporate debtor is not paying a money properly within a due dates, within time. He is delaying. He is in a little kind of a stress. So he is the only identifier. He can refer it to a zonal office or regional office. Then they can make a decision. They can refer it to further to your head office, and their legal department can take the appropriate action for referring the cases to IBC, moving the case under IBC. And one more thing is, once the case is initiated under the IBC, the banker's role is very, very important. They have to coordinate with the resolution professional in bringing the resolution in a timely manner. So they have to see that they have to give a lot of inputs with respect to the resolution plan, what it should be, whether the resolution is possible or not. These are because they are the deciding authority. They have the upper hand. The creditors, as a creditors, collectively they have upper hand, and they have to do all these things. So the bankers as a COC, their role is very, very prominent here. So the one more important area is the interim finance, arranging interim finance for the corporate debtor to run during the CRP period. Whether the COC can do that, because already they have suffered, they have burnt their fingers by lending the amount to the particular corporate debtor. Whether they can pump in additional funds is a big question. These are all the unanswered questions. Then information memorandum, therein also a lot of inputs has to be given by the bankers. The finalizing eligibility of prospective resolution applicants, that's very, very important. Role of bankers. Here in case of a resolution plan, we will have an evaluation matrix. The evaluation matrix will be mentioning who can participate in the resolution plan, what is the eligibility criteria for participation, what is the maximum amount, what is the EMD amount, everything will be mentioned. All these things should be given or collectively decided by the committee of creditors. So their role as a lenders is paramount importance in the COC. And again, the examination of feasibility and viability of a resolution plan. This is also one of the primary role of the bankers. Bankers actually, they have to think from the businesses. Earlier, sir, just I am going to close it in 1 or 2 minutes. Banker, they have to really think from the business sense. Earlier, they will be thinking from only from the finance angle, their point of view. Now the IBC regime, they have to take a business decision, and they have to take a call from the business point of view also, because they are going to revive the company rather than only recovering their funds. They have to support the revival of a particular corporate debtor also. So the banker's role is paramount important. So the voting of the committee, this is a very, very important thing. Earlier it was 75% at the when the act came. Now it's been reduced to 66%. So that's what I were discussing all through this particular discussion. Cooperation between the IRP, RRP and the CEC is very, very important because RP or IRP being a center point of this CRP process, the COC coordination between the IRP and COC is very, very important. Without that, the resolution plan will not be successful and it will not be achieved in a timely manner. So with this, we are coming to a very, very last part of our presentation session. So the advantages, what is the advantage of IBC to the banks and ultimately to the countries? In DRT or SARFAESI proceedings, whether it may take, there is no time limit for DRT or SARFAESI. Here in IBC, there is a fixed time limit. There is a paramount importance for the RBI to give importance to IBC. Then you might have heard about the one-time settlement systems. All these things, it's a difficult process. But whenever IBC comes, there is a control over the bankers, has control over the assets of the company. They can realize the assets by maximizing the value. That is one of the biggest advantages for the COC. But ultimately, a lot of bankers are there. Again, it's not a, in paper, it's very good, but in practical sense, I think it's a difficult process. In early corporate data, it's enterprise value. That's a realization of enterprise value is very, very important because the purpose of IBC is to improve the performance of the corporate performance. So the ranking we have improved, though we have improved our ranking in ease of doing business. The resolution of insolvency, I think it will take little time because we have achieved 5 years of IBC. Till then, out of 5 years, almost 2 years, it's been gone. Almost 1.5 years is gone out because of COVID. So I think we feel a lot of advantages are there for a banker as well as country, but a lot of time, the time only will give the biggest advantage. Just I'll give you a glance of what are the COVID related amendments, because earlier it was only 1 lakh, any default for 1 lakh, anybody, either any operation creditor can approach. Because of that, lakhs of cases has been pumped in and blocked the NCLT operations. Now it's been increased to 1 crore. On final stage, I am coming to my final slide of my presentation. It's the future development. What is there in it in the IBC in the future? So we can avoid and we can expect that the sooner the cross-border insolvency, that is across, if a company is situated outside India or one of their unit is outside India, how to resolve it, how to liquidate it, that's there in a cross-border insolvency. And pre-packed insolvency is much talked about, and almost within, and I think it has already it's already been introduced, and it will take another year or so to bring in the real picture of what is pre-packed insolvency and what are the benefits are, because it will reduce the time, and standard package will reduce the timelines. Then insolvency resolution framework for MSMEs, because India consists of more than 80-85% of MSMEs, we need certain resolution framework for MSMEs. And finally, we have to talk about the individual insolvency also. This is the ultimate thing to achieve the insolvency resolution, this in the IBC framework. So with this, I complete my presentation. Anybody who is having any query on this, they can just ask me.
Thank you, sir,
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
excellent presentation. Insolvency and bankruptcy code is very important in relation to company law and banking operations. We are arranged our resource person explained and narrated very clearly with a short span of time. Really useful, sir. It is my, I want a clarification.
Yes, sir.
I read newspaper about Vijay Mallya,
Yes.
daily newspaper.
Yes.
He stated that the due amount collected by the government at the double time.
Yeah.
What is the impact of bankruptcy code and insolvency?
Because actually Vijay Malaya's case is already been done before that. This thing, it's been handled by various cases because he has gone outside India only because he cannot be captured under any of these laws. So he is handled at the court in UK, and they have given a various verdict against him. So UK court and whatever the property is located outside India, it can be handled by the respective jurisdiction court. That's why the Vijay Mallya case is very, very difficult to handle for Indian regulators because most of his assets, whatever the assets are there, it's located outside India.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your clarification. Thank you very much.
Sir, I wish to ask one
Sir,
small
So can I
question.
ask you a question, sir? Can I
Yeah,
ask you a
Before that,
question?
I want to ask my question. Sir, your session was very interesting,
Certainly.
and
sir.
after listening to you,
Yeah.
I can feel that there is a security for the money.
Certainly, certainly, sir.
Banks
Certainly.
as well as for the. My
Yeah.
basic question is,
Yeah.
the waiver of loan by the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, the waiver of corporate loans, will it not go against the insolvency code?
Yeah,
Will it
certainly,
not be
sir.
contradictory? Will it not be contradictory?
Certainly, certainly. It's waiver by any government per se. It's against because corporate loans normally it depends because it's against the IBC code because IBC structure is entirely a systematic process. But the waiver of loan again it depends, sir, because there are a lot of things are there in waiving a loan.
Waiver of 5,000 crores or 6,000 crores, it's quite unimaginable. And
Yeah,
for
yes.
what reasons?
Yeah, yes, waiver of corporate loans, it depends on case by cases and straight away we can't say that it's against the law or like that because against it, they might having the because they are in the upper position, they are in upper thing of the pyramid, they have a better picture than what we see. Certainly there will be some kind of a reason we may not know, but certainly from my point of view most of the things are coming under the IBC code, whatever is coming. We are talking about the haircuts, we talk about some of the cases I seen the haircut means the reduction given, it's almost 90%, one of the cases it's given 94% is haircut is given. That means say it's 100 crores, 94 crore is given. One mainly if you see that case means most the value of the asset is very less. Most of the cases what happens is because of the delay happening, it's 3-year-old or 4-year-old case, there will be in book, it will be there in the books of the company, in accounts it will be there. But if you go and really see, I've seen a lot of properties myself, a lot of sugar factories here and outside Tamil Nadu also I've seen a lot of units. So if it is not functioning for say for example a paper mill or a sugar mill, if it is not functioning for even 6 months, the value of the machinery which goes down by almost 50%. That's what the technical person say. So if it is not running for say 1 year or 2 year, automatically the value will be less. Only we can fetch the land and building. The land cost will be realizing, otherwise nothing. Most of the cases is like that. That's why they are stressing about the speedy recovery and default early detection of the stress.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Murarji, can I add something for your question?
Yes, please, sir.
As far as the write-off of the corporate loans are concerned,
Yeah.
neither the government nor anybody can write off corporate loans except the banks.
Yes.
But banks write-off of the corporate loans are the technically written off accounts. If we
Yes.
analyze the cases under IBC,
Yes.
majority of the cases are technically written off cases only.
Yeah, yes.
So by technically writing off, the banks will not lose. They will continue the process either to the DRT or any other legal measures. But
Yeah,
because
yes.
IBC has come, technically written off accounts, whatever the banks recover, it will add to their profits because they are 100% provided for.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
But
thanks.
smaller loans provisioning that does not affect this IBC process.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thanks for substantiating for us, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, you can mute and talk, sir, please.
Sir, unmute, sir.
Yeah, yes. You can unmute, please.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I want to some clarification regarding of IBC code.
Yeah, yes, sir, please.
Parliament session is passed IBC code till 2021.
Yeah.
They said that the banks are recovered 5.5 crores, out of
Yes.
which 1.5 crores are recovered. Is it one kind of parameter the banks are merged, sir, for bad debts?
Which one, sir? Pardon, sir?
For this, according to this, the merger of the banks,
Yeah.
this is one kind of parameter to merge banks for the IBC code till 2021 is passed. And they said, Madam, the finance minister said at the parliament, the bad debts are recovered 5.5 crores, out of which 1.5 crores already is recovered. They said that some of the companies or banks are they are not in a position to recover. What is the special features of this? Insolvency Code 2021.
Yeah,
But
yes.
my observation, this is one kind of the parameters that banks are merged because the latest the banks are merged in this for umbrella. Is it one kind of parameters or some other cases, sir? What do you want to say?
Yeah, certainly, sir. Number of banks, I think the government is in the mood of reducing the number of banks. Or earlier, we were looking for the competition. Nowadays, we don't feel that too many banks are also spoiling things. So, because the structure of the banks, also most of the banks are, because of the competition, they were to lend in a lesser interest rate, and because of that, they were able to not recover because every bank has the target, they have to achieve the profit, and because of the pressure, the bankers are making losses. They were not able to identify a proper creditor. So because of that, most of the bankers are not achieving the profits, desired profit. If you see most of the bankers' balance sheet and NPA levels in the recent times, it's been phenomenal. It's been built almost over last 20-25 years. Lot of banks, because of the competition. Earlier, if you say, I think if you are a senior and 6 years, around 6 years, I think the people will remember that we were only three or four banks in those days, and all the banks were providing a good services. But today, the people are coming to our doorsteps, and apart from that, for individual, it's benefit. But if you see that other side, they were charging lot of costs, or the interest given is coming down. All these things are there. Only I think these are all the reasons, main reasons for merger of the banks. Apart from IBC, again because of the failure of recovery, also this is one of the reasons for mergers of the bankers.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other clarifications from the participant side?
Yeah. Yes.
Madam Vijayalakshmi, please.
Yeah. Yes, madam. Please.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. It was a wonderful session, sir, and it was an analytical session. I learned much more about IBC. I think the loopholes, what we have in this, is that benefiting the people like Nirav Modi and Vijay Mallya?
Yeah, yes. Actually, we can't loopholes rather than we think means they are thinking beyond the law, because rather than loophole, if you think of from starting from the Harshad Mehta regime from 2090s, and now all are using the actually they are not following the law means they are creating their own this thing. Because for one person, if you want to tighten the law means again, the 99% is going to suffer.
It's true.
So that should not happen actually in real sense. It should not happen. As an academician, if you are thinking, if you are academician, or I'm also in academic part, if you are thinking in that sense, laws to be strict means 99% will be suffering, because they are using, they are actually frauding or defrauding the entire system. So for them, we have to give a stricter punishment. Without the stricter punishment, the defrauders will be doing like that only. Instead of stricting the law, we have to strengthen our penalty system. Our penalty system is not that much. Say, if you go for a court, the people will think that I can go for n number of years. I will enjoy till the time. So that's the mindset of today's a fraudster or anybody is creating or finding a loopholes. Instead, if you penalize them very strict and give them, because of stricter things in the, if you stick the law, then mostly the sufferers is going to be MSMEs. MSMEs won't get credit, because today I am literally seeing lot of MSMEs are suffering because of these IBCs.
Yeah, even regarding the COVID, they are the sufferers, real sufferers.
Yes, madam. Yes, yeah, because of this, if you stick the law, then ultimately the MSMEs will be the sufferer, not the bigger persons or not this kind of fraudsters.
You know, if you take the ratio, if you take the ratio, the more thing is with respect to most of the MNCs are not with the SMEs. That's what we see.
Yeah. Yes, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a time for vote of thanks. First of all, I thank and congratulate the coordinator of Atal training program to bring such kind of nice experts in the field of IBC. Thank you, Professor Vaidirajan, to bring such experts. Company Secretary Mr. Vasudevan has given a wonderful and informative session. Almost he covered entire Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Act 2016. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code in detail, mode of resolution, moratorium effect, IBC process, appointment of interim resolution personnel, resolution personnel duties and rights, committee of creditors, resolution plans, waterfall mechanism, benefits of IBC, and finally future development in IBC. Almost he covered IBC 2016. With this, I definitely the participants benefited with your detailed presentation, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
On behalf of the Department of Corporate Secretaryship and Atal team, I thank on behalf of Dr. Vaidirajan, President Head, and Dr. Ganeshamurthy, Deputy Coordinator, and my own behalf. I thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir. Vasudevan, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, Watson, sir, please go down, please.
Yes.